User joined your channel.
E é um zoarzinho ali me matando. Vou chegar lá com
User entered your channel.
GG, pai.
Acabou a quest, Chuck?
Quase. Finalmente já.
Chuquito.
Chuck Berry.
Chuquito. Aqueles lanchinhos pequenininhos aqui, parece que tem céu. Chuquita, chuquita. Tá, poxa. O cara reduziu um de mana meu.
Quase na parte dos 700 mobs já. Falta só mais 2 NPCs, se eu não me engano.
User was moved out of your channel.
O monastério agora.
Aí sim.
Esse de monastério aqui é o daqui mesmo, é? Daqui, de Godá.
User joined your
Pede pra ir.
channel.
Hã?
Esse monastério que pede aqui da quest é o daqui de Godá ou de Rune, será?
Aí. Teu fone tem puxa-taco não, ô Biribinha?
Oi?
Teu fone tem puxa-taco?
Tempo, só que quando eu faço alguma coisa, aí fica pressionado. Tipo, eu tomei critical, eu fui abrir o L2. Aí como eu fico falando e abrindo, é como se fosse tipo, segurando. Uma merda, eu não esqueço. Porque eu tava obcecado pra matar o cara. Na hora que eu tava do lado, a merda do stalk.
Acho que é o de Rune, bot. Tem no NPC lá, Tablet of Vision.
Vamos lá.
Só lá em Monas, aí depois volta pra Godá, fala e ela pede o negócio lá dos 700 mobs.
Have access to Noble's spoiler, come to Olympiad Channel 1. We will do class based.
Neguinho veio matar meu Charter Guardian, querendo com suporte. Vim aqui com Redfield, só 2 tapas. Os maguinhos tudo. Ainda mudei o surprise, motherfucker, quando cheguei.
User left your channel.
Terminei, boy. Só entregar ali agora. Aí é os mobs lá, 700. Pronto, boy.
Vem pra lá, já vai.
Hã?
Guys, nobody has access to Nobles spoiler.
Precisa matar 700 mobs. Depois que termina de matar essa ruma de mob, vai terminar a quest e pronto.
Tá pronto, Choco?
Tô pronto já.
Pega a busca na carrão aqui. Vamos lembrar de eu pegar um flu ali. Não, pode ficar aí, eu vou sozinho. Vou pegar a flu pra bater.
Vou ter que levar o bola gato pra lá.
Precisa não, eu sou nobre.
Sim, eu não sou nobre não.
Você vai andando, mas eu.
Andando?
É, o buff do menino tá lá.
Ah, então pronto.
Comprar um shot de grade D,
User joined
rodinho
your channel.
Tô só de grade D.
de grade brecha no jeito aí.
Salve, salve
Deixa a sala aqui,
família.
mas eu como nós fazer a quest. É
3
isso,
horas e
Pedro?
10 de
Tá.
fila.
Ah,
Mas
não, né? Dessa
tô
sala, vamos falar com a quest, não,
vacinado.
User
Uhul.
left your channel. User left your channel.
Tá que level BR? Tá bom. Isso é level básico, vai ficar ruim quando chegar no 47. Eita, 67. Fica, ó, uma merda. Amanhã. Pronto. Barra target do zoar. Os carinha, BR, eu tava jogando com a minha conta. Os carinha foi lá e passou a PK em mim. E era o guarda da conta do iFood. Loguei ele, fui lá. Os caras, seu lixo, morrendo e veio de Draconic agora pra me matar. Meu Deus, não aguento. Casa de esporte, meu Deus. Meu Deus. Meu Deus. Bando de criança.
Não, não, vai.
User left your channel.
Neutron stars are the densest things that are not black holes. In their cores, we might find the most dangerous substance in existence: strange matter. A bizarre thing so extreme that it bends the rules of the universe and could infect and destroy everything it comes into contact with. Or it could teach us about how the universe began. Maybe both. To understand how extreme strange matter really is, we first need to get a few basics. What is a neutron star, and how does strange matter break the rules of the universe? To get all of this into one video, we'll grossly oversimplify a few things, but we'll provide you with further reading if you want more details. A neutron star is what remains after a very massive star explodes in a supernova. When this happens, the star's core collapses under its own gravity with such a strong inward force that it squeezes nuclei and particles together violently. Electrons are pushed into protons, so they merge and turn into neutrons. All the nothing inside of atoms is suddenly completely filled with particles that really don't want to be close to each other but have no choice. They desperately push back against gravity, against the collapse. If gravity wins, they will become a black hole. If they win, they become a neutron star. This makes neutron stars like giant atomic nuclei the size of a city, but holding the mass of our sun. And here, things get weird. The environment in the core of neutron stars is so extreme that the rules of nuclear physics change. And this could lead to a strange and extremely dangerous substance. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We first need to know the rules before we learn how they can be broken. Protons and neutrons, the particles making up the nuclei of atoms, are made up of smaller particles called quarks. Quarks really don't want to be alone. They are what we call confined. You can try to separate them, but the harder you pull, the harder they try to pull themselves back together. If you use a lot of energy, they just use this energy to create new quarks. Quarks only exist together as the building blocks of other particles and have never been observed by themselves. They come in many types, but only two appear to make stable matter: the up and down quarks found in protons and neutrons. All other quarks seem to decay away quickly. But this may be different inside neutron stars. The forces operating in their cores are so extreme that they are actually similar to the universe shortly after the Big Bang. Neutron star cores are like fossils, which can let us peer back in time to the beginning of everything. So learning how quarks behave inside a neutron star is a way of understanding the very nature of the universe itself. One hypothesis is that inside a neutron star core, protons and neutrons deconfine.
Guys, can anyone replace modurizing in PI? They need PO because modurizing can spoiler, and we need one spoiler to do class based. So Nervous needs PO in PI. So if you can replace modurizing, please do it.
This is a tune. Hands up, guys. This is a banger.
I like Liquid. There's so many good picks. It's a
Game 4, OG up at the moment in this best of 5, 2-1 against Liquid.
Okay, I won my last BB game.
oh, okay, that's good.
Nice.
I won my last BB game, guys.
Just turn your back always on me. Okay?
Yeah, I know, man. Shut the fuck up. I know. Your motherfuckers.
15 wins in a row, 48-8. In this game. Game 4, Liquid, they have had the chance to switch it up, but is it good enough to beat the OG IO? He is 5-0 here at TI. No one has been able to beat him.
Liquid looks to go for something that's more early game centric. The last two drafts, they went for the Tidehunter, the TA, and the Shogs. Very slow paced draft. This time, they get their chance. Jarek's bottom though.
Jarek's is going to come down. Now turn this duo into a tri-lane from OG as Kuro pops the ferret fire, won't save it. Alright, what shit?
Oh shit. I'm with you, man.
GH. They're trying to collapse in onto Thompson. He gets the cooldown off, but the Hellbear smashes in with the clap. Liquid making these moves around Kuro.
Yeah, play YOLO. We need to do the first move, okay?
I'm coming, Kuro.
Yeah, I'm moving top. We can't be static.
GH and Kuroki, they're looking towards Seb.
Seb, they're deeping. They're ganking you. Get out.
Gonna bring in Weeha as well. Weeha, the focus fire. Have they got the control? There's the rolling with the stun. Shackle shot long with the power shot. Will do it. Liquid's change up in draft and different approach is the answer they've been looking for.
GH? And they just keep looking for more.
He's trying to run.
I need help.
No TP.
Oh my god. I need help, boys.
I don't have TP.
I'm getting fucked.
TPs will now start to come into play. They'll get the kill on Jarex. Thompson's here. He's on top of Kuroki.
Recoming now, Kuro.
They're joining the gang. They're surrounding Thompson with a divine favor. Bringing Weeha in. Liquid. They're going to be able to get both of them.
Nice. Nice. It's fucking YOLO their asses. Yeah, YOLO their asses.
5 Liquid heroes in the mid lane. Trying to brawl again at the same time as last game. It's 13 minutes in. They want to go for no-tail, but he's got ulti.
Go on the Abaddon. Let's go. Yeah, that's the best target.
Miracle's going to continue to chase this under the Titu, and they will get it. Seb holding them back.
What is this Timber doing, guys? I'm on him.
Seb chains out, back over the river. He's fine. Shackle.
Oh my
They've got
god.
the lockdown. They've got the roll forward. The kickback. They'll crush him.
Nice, man.
Nice shot. They used all the cooldowns.
Yeah.
They're fucked. Oh, I'm going for more.
It's Liquid. They're diving again.
On top.
They got a bit of a flavor of how OG was playing in these last 2 games, and they're saying we could do it too.
This is really crazy.
Yeah, but this is awful for them. Just wasting their time. Keep farming.
Yeah, I should farm.
Thompson posts the cooldown.
Yep.
Oh, tiny here.
Tiny.
Oh, here. Nice one. We can Roche. I have
Yeah,
DD.
go Roche. Nice. Do we care about Roche, guys?
I don't think I care.
I don't think we give a shit about Roche this game. Okay. No. I mean, Wind Ranger has to take it, right? I'll show me them.
So Agzio finished. We're about to hit 20 minutes. So I'm assuming that OG's gonna buy the tome and Diffusal Gyrocopter.
Wait, what?
Diffusal? gyrocopter.
Treads diffusal gyrocopter. Fancy that, Thompson.
X, he's strong, but we have an Aegis BB here. I want to go aggro. I don't know how they can stop us.
They can.
They can.
Guys, they're starting to hit high ground though.
Yeah.
High ground where? We have X. We just need Tom for this IO.
Win Ranger. You want on me, any help. Nice!
Starting to hit high ground though.
Yeah.
High ground where? We have X. We just need Tom for this IO.
Win Ranger. You want on me, any help. Nice!
Do you fight this? IO coming, 15.
Level 15 on Io. That spirit hero damage is there now. Ana gonna join the fray finally.
There we have it, Miracle's mana. It's pretty much entirely gone. Right, Thompson's focus to look towards GH. He's trying to roll, he can't get out, there's no mana. GH!
I can fight back recall.
I'm killing Timber.
There's a shackle turn around, they're looking for Jarek. Jarek's backing away. Thompson focusing Miracle. Miracle's still out of mana because of this diffusal. Jarek is in with the combo. The GA is out. We all will fall though. The magic damage is there for Thompson. Miracle's trying to run.
I don't have mana actually. They're fucking me with the mana. Can we fight here? There's no Timber, guys. They can kill. They're gonna go on you.
I'm running TP. Get him.
Nice one. They'll die. You have a shine. Yeah, TP. Nice one.
They're all gonna die.
They'll die.
I'm netted.
Nice one, Ana.
Why are you running?
I'm just memeing, Johan. Don't worry.
Holy crap, Thompson, the diffusal is absolutely working. He burned all their mana.
That I don't think anyone would have expected to see Gyro, the deciding game.
Tiny and the Gyro. I'm gonna go on Bristol Timber right now. Okay, I'm coming.
Yeah, keep in mind, Wind Ranger.
Stay focused.
This is the tipping. Wind Ranger here.
Oh my god. OG starting to take over the game completely here.
We're outnumbered. They have nothing. Go.
Dying.
Nice. I'm looking at the Bristol. Good job, boys. I fucked up mother.
And they're just moving into the base now, OG. They're pushing in. Flack starts to force Liquid back. They'll focus Miracle. He'll get himself out and away. The missile is out. They're trying to put the heals to save him, but Miracle's dead. He doesn't have buyback. Jackson's in with the combo. They'll break down GH.
Fucking dying.
Should fight them on the shrines right now.
They can back up, clean up shrines, but I think if Liquid chases out, OG can definitely just turn to look for the fight.
Look at them, they're running in.
Oh, yes.
I know Earth Spirit, they can't fight this.
Yeah, that's good. They're running. I don't right now.
And OG's ready to glance back in again. Jackson with the wrap around the combo down onto Mike without to back off. Again, can they fight for the duration of it though? They're getting towards Seb. Heals a pop. Seb's back pretty much up to full. Jackson with another combo onto We Are stunned. We Are dead.
That's fine. It's rough, boys. Yeah.
Pushing Liquid back to the base. Mind control out of mana. Thompson with his diffuser blade, picking them apart. Cuts him down with the chakram. They're pushing on OG. Liquid getting forced back to the base as Liquid have nothing. They have nothing to offer, folks.
They're just giving, look at this, they're driving Fountain in the TI finals. They want Kuroki in the Fountain as well. They're gonna get him, they're chasing Miracle as well.
Okay, boys. GG. It's rough, but yeah, it's GG. Let's still try.
GG is gone! OG are your two-time TI champions!
Wanna come, bro? Man, what are you doing, man? It's back to back. Holy fucking insane.
Hi guys, Sci-Fi recapped here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today, I'm gonna explain a 2019 sci-fi movie called Lifelike. The movie starts with a newly married couple named Sophie and James. They both are very happy with their married life, and it looks like they're moving to a new apartment, bringing an old couch. James has been working on the trust fund run by his father, who is a very rich businessman. One day, he receives a call from his family telling him that his father has died. Automatically, he inherits his father's business and becomes CEO of his father's company. James and Sophie decide to move away from the city into a suburban mansion. Day by day, they start their new life in the mansion. They have a lot of maids to take care of their household chores, so Sophie doesn't work and spends most of her time at home. Unfortunately, she is not used to this luxurious life, like the maids who serve her all the time, even though her maids have worked very well. She feels that she only wants to live alone with James in the mansion. Firmly, she chooses to fire all the maids by giving them layoffs. James, who initially knows about this, is very disappointed with Sophie. He says that they need some maids to take care of their big mansion. But in the end, he gets what Sophie wants and they decide to make love in the bed. At some point, James, who is working very hard, is called by his wife in the middle of a meeting. Sophie asks him to help start the lawnmower in their yard. James ends up fixing the engine at night. Every day, Sophie is still confused about her new job. She starts complaining to James, although she had fired all the maids in her house. As a final point, they meet Julian, a man who sells artificially intelligent robots to be used as domestic servants. At first, James wants to rent a beautiful robot, but Sophie doesn't agree because she wants to be the only woman in their house. Finally, they agree to choose a male robot, named Henry, who dutifully carries out their commands around the house. In the beginning, everything goes normally. Henry as a robot prepares breakfast for them every morning, and mows the grass in their yard as ordered by James and Sophie. At one time, Henry is cleaning Sophie's room and accidentally sees her wearing clothes. Sophie is very surprised by his presence and asks him to get out. She keeps complaining to James about Henry's action, until one day, their relationship is getting tense. Sophie often feels lonely because James is always busy at work. As a result, she tries to spend more time with Henry. From now on, she starts to have feelings for him. She tells him to read a book about human feelings and emotions. Therefore, Henry begins to develop emotions and have dreams due to the robot's intelligence system, which will adapt to the things he faces. One evening, Sophie wakes up from her bed and hears something from outside the house. She finds Henry sleeping outside stark naked and somewhat disoriented, saying that he dreams of being a human. The next day, they go straight to Julian and ask about Henry's strangeness last night. Julian says that it could happen because they overdeveloped Henry's emotions, such as often doing human things with him. When they come home, James blames Sophie for everything she has done to Henry. Currently, their relationship is getting worse. After work, James finds a letter written by Sophie. The letter was written by Sophie when they first moved into the house, showing how much she loved James. Then he brings some candles into his room to apologize and ask Sophie to make love. But sadly, she turns it down because she isn't really in the mood. At one night, Henry tells Sophie that he's been feeling some emotions lately. He feels like he was programmed to fulfill everything that James and Sophie needs, including sleeping together and making love to them. That night, Sophie dreams that Henry is kissing and making love to her while massaging her. When James goes to work, Sophie intentionally opens her bedroom door and masturbates about her dream last night. Afterwards, she discovers Henry outside her room, asking if he was watching her recently. Later, James sees Sophie and Henry sitting by the pool. He is envious of their recent closeness. He decides to meet up with Julian again, asking him a solution for Henry. Julian tells him that Henry's behavior will be in line with his owner's wishes. With the information, James warns Henry not to interact with his wife again. A dejected Henry deliberately informs Sophie about the warning, causing James and Sophie to argue once more. Consequently, Sophie leaves the house for the next few days. When James asks Henry to bring his razor, Henry comes naked. The encounter between them leads to an awkward exchange, which ends with Henry kissing James. This incident makes James to question his sexuality. The next day in his office, James calls Sophie to mend their relationship. Sophie secretly comes home just to meet Henry. After Henry kisses Sophie while massaging her, Sophie is disturbed when Henry mouths "I love you" in the same manner used by James. When James comes home, she informs him of the encounter just now, causing James enraged. He then bumps into Henry and slaps him, brutally disconnecting his charging station. The next morning, James and Sophie are waiting for Julian to arrive at their home. James leaves for work first because he has waited too long for Julian. That day, Henry wakes up very late. Suddenly, he comes and wonders to Sophie about his charging station being disconnected. He also explains all the events that happened when Sophie left the house. Not long after, Julian comes to the house, but Sophie decides to see James at his office. Oddly enough, Henry looks at his bruises from the mirror, questioning that he is a robot. Julian orders him to go to his bed, but he doesn't want to comply. He also realizes that Julian has been lying to him all this time. Back to Sophie and James, they both regret their actions. James explains that he took his lust on Henry because he was previously rejected by Sophie. They eventually forgive each other's mistakes. At home, they are surprised by Henry naked outside. Henry realizes that all along he is a human. Julian is discovered to be a fraud, and all of his robots are revealed to be real humans whom he had raised. Julian had taken custody of Henry, and all of his outside. Henry realizes that all along he is a human. Julian is discovered to be a fraud, and all of his robots are revealed to be real humans whom he had raised. Julian had taken custody of Henry when he was a small child who was rejected by his mother and had suffered serious physical abuse. He had raised all of them to believe they were robots. James and Sophie with 2 FBI agents go to their residence to arrest Julian. Julian shoots them with a shotgun all of a sudden. He points his gun at James and Sophie, but then Henry attacked Julian. Julian shoots them with a shotgun all of a sudden. He points his gun at James and Sophie, but then Henry attacks him, beating him mercilessly with a shotgun. Feeling betrayed by his maker and ashamed for betraying his keepers, Henry commits harakiri with a large knife. James and Sophie cry and comfort Henry as he dies. 5 years later, they are shown with a young son, named Henry. They plan to tell their son about his namesake someday. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching. Story recapped here. Next day, following his mother's funeral, Evan grieves with his only friend, Tom, accusing Evan, causing him to. A drunk man followed them on their way home. 1,000-year-old mutant, showing the painting she posed for thousands of years
Guys,
ago.
if anyone
Louise
has access
discloses
to
that
no
she's
less
pregnant,
spoiler,
and the embryonic
please come
cells
to
help her and
Olympia
maintain her
Channel
age,
1.
But Evan leaves will prevent her from transferring her mind and assist him. The two enter the form. With a last shot taken, she warns Evan to step away from her before it's too late. However, Evan in the process during that time. Evan then flee for his voice stutters by to look at Louise in total admiration. Indeed, their story applies the saying love knows no boundaries.
Ooh, this is a tune. Hands up.
Story recapped here. At the conference room, Cooper gets briefed for the mission. NASA has discovered teases his sister for saying that a ghost broke their father's miniature lander. Cooper reminds Murph that ghosts aren't real but challenges her to make a believable case to prove her theory. The adults make their way outside to talk about the spreading disease named blight affecting the farms. Cooper and the kids leave their home, and on their way to school, they blow a tire. Cooper orders Tom to patch up the tires while he and Murph talk. A military drone passes above them, and Cooper hurries the children inside. They follow the drone despite having a flat tire, passing through the cornfields. Tom assumes control of the vehicle while his father scrambles for his equipment. Cooper is preoccupied with trying to capture the drone, not realizing they're at the edge of a cliff. Cooper successfully hacks the drone, and he lands it with Murph's help. With no military for the drone to serve, Cooper intends to give it a better purpose. They arrive at school. Tom leaves for class while Murph stays in the car. Cooper attends a parent-teacher conference where the principal expresses Tom's potential of being a great farmer someday. But Cooper wants Tom to go to college and argues that taxpayer money should fund the university since there are no more armies. The country, however, doesn't need any more college-educated people. They need farmers to help the worldwide famine. Next, Murph's teacher shows concern over her interest in the moon landing. The moon landing is now considered a fake, and Murph shouldn't focus on such things. When the teacher calls the so-called breakthroughs of society useless, Cooper argues that if those useless breakthroughs like the MRI were still being produced, his wife would still be alive. The teacher apologizes and asks for Cooper's help concerning Murph's behavior. Cooper says he'll handle it by taking her to a baseball game. Cooper returns to the car and tells Murph she's suspended. They head back to the farm where the tractors have gone haywire. In Murph's room, they find books all over the floor. Murph says it's the ghost communicating through Morse code, but Cooper disagrees. Later that day, Cooper fixes the tractors, but the reason they malfunctioned remains a mystery. He and Donald reminisce about the old days when there was an innovation every day. Donald likes the world's current peaceful situation, but he worries about Cooper's unrelenting dream of space travel. At the baseball game, Tom agrees to take care of the farm in the future. Suddenly, sirens start wailing, bringing a sandstorm to the people's attention. Everyone doesn't seem too alarmed, and they leave in an orderly fashion. The family drives back to their home when Murph realizes that she left the window open. She and Cooper run up to close it. As the dust settles, Cooper observes the strange pattern on the floor. The next day, Murph finds her father in her room. Cooper throws a coin that quickly drops to the floor. He smiles, saying that the ghost in Murph's room is gravity all along. Realizing that the sand is communicating through binary, the father-daughter duo pulls out a map to mark the coordinates given by the sand. Cooper prepares to head to the location, refusing to let Murph go with him. But Murph stows away by hiding under the blankets, forcing Cooper to let her join. Night arrives, and Cooper drives carefully around the unknown area. He exits the vehicle to cut down the gate blocking them. A flashlight turns on, and a voice threatens Cooper before tasing him. Inside the protected area, Cooper wakes up and gets interrogated by TARS. A tactical robot. Dr. Amelia Brand enters the room, introducing herself to Cooper, who's familiar with another Professor Brand. Amelia leads Cooper to a conference room where his daughter mingles with the Professor Brand. Light turns on, and a voice threatens Cooper before tasing him. Inside the protected area, Cooper wakes up and gets interrogated by TARS. A tactical robot. Dr. Amelia Brand enters the room, introducing herself to Cooper, who's familiar with another Professor Brand. Amelia leads Cooper to a conference room where his daughter mingles with the elderly crowd. There he reconnects with Professor Brand. Cooper explains how they found the hidden base vaguely until Murph blurts out that gravity led them there. Cooper refuses to say more unless their safety is guaranteed. They laugh at him as they reveal their NASA. Behind the walls is a group of engineers working on a rocket ship. Professor Brand explains how society doesn't support funding for space exploration anymore because of the famine. However, they've transitioned their efforts to finding a solution to the food shortage. Different crops get affected by the blight disease each year. Wheat and potatoes are no longer grown, and they expect corn to be the next to fall. The blight consumes the oxygen on Earth, thus, Professor Brand predicts that Murph's generation will be the last to survive. NASA has no plan to save the world, but they plan to leave it. Professor Brand introduces Cooper to Project Endurance, the final addition to the Lazarus Missions. The Lazarus Missions are Earth's last expedition in hopes of finding a habitable planet. After some convincing, Cooper agrees to be Project Endurance's pilot for humanity and especially for his children. At the conference room, Cooper gets briefed for the mission. NASA has discovered a wormhole near Saturn that leads to another galaxy. They also think that some omnibenevolent beings placed the wormhole as a means to help humans. 10 years ago, NASA sent 12 astronauts to the 12 planets. Only 3 have sent transmissions about their planet's suitability for life. The mission has a Plan A and a Plan B. Plan A is to use the entire facility, the one they're currently in, as a spacecraft that will harness gravitational forces to propel itself and the surviving humans into space. However, the process is only in theory. Professor Brand is yet to translate it into practice. Plan B, on the other hand, will send thousands of fertilized eggs to start a colony on the new planet. With a determined look, Professor Brand assures Cooper that Plan A will be operational by the time he returns. His words reach Cooper's soul, and from then on, Cooper puts his complete faith in him. Back at home, Cooper tries to talk to Murph, who's saddened by the news of her father leaving. Donald confronts Cooper later that night about his dream of space travel finally coming to reality. Cooper says that the mission is humankind's final hope. It's time they leave the planet that's been slowly killing them off. Morning arrives, and Cooper comforts Murph. Cooper tells her that he's only doing this for her and Tom. Murph tries to change his mind, saying that the message from the ghost is the word stay. Cooper doesn't listen and hugs her tightly as if it's the last time. He gives her a watch, telling her that time in space is slower than on Earth and that they may be the same age when he returns. However, she throws it away out of anger. Cooper bids farewell and assures her he'll be back. Outside, Cooper hugs his son, passing the truck and his responsibilities to him. In the car, he looks under the blanket to make sure Murph isn't there. After he's driven off, Murph runs to chase him, but she's too late. As the countdown commences, drops of tears flow down his face as if it's counting for him. The rocket launches, and Cooper's crew, along with TARS, leaves their home. In space, Amelia engages in playful banter with Cooper. They near the Endurance space station, and Doyle prepares to lock the hatch, successfully docking the spacecraft. The crew enters the station and powers up the controls in case. Another tactical robot. The boosters turn on, and the space station starts rotating. Romilly, another member of the crew, feels sick. Professor Brand appears on the screen and wishes them good luck with their 2-year journey to Saturn. Endurance starts spinning its way into the deep dark space. On the window, Cooper observes Earth now miles away. Meanwhile, Romilly enters his chamber, getting ready for deep sleep. Amelia and Cooper talk about the 3 astronauts they're potentially meeting, Dr. Mann, Dr. Miller, and Dr. Edmonds. Dr. Mann receives high praise from her as he inspired the rest of them to follow him on the dangerous expedition. Amelia enters her chamber, and Cooper takes this time to talk to Tars privately. He asks the robot if Amelia has a relationship with Dr. Edmonds. Tars dodges the question, saying it's programmed not to disclose sensitive information. Cooper sits in front of the video recorder, saying his goodbyes to his children before he goes into a deep sleep. Back on Earth, Professor Brand visits Cooper's family. He gives them the video message from Cooper, but Murph isn't interested. Brand talks to Donald about taking Murph under his wing. Years pass, and near the outskirts of Saturn, a faint shine is seen passing by. Cooper is awake, watching the video messages from his family. He sits beside Romilly, who seems paranoid about their situation. Cooper comforts him and lets him borrow his earphones. Doyle and Cooper review the images collected by probes that went through the wormhole. On the radio, Amelia informs the crew that they'll reach the wormhole in a few hours. The crew sits anxiously in their spacesuits with the fate of humanity resting on their shoulders. The ship's integrity barely keeps up with the insane speeds as they travel through the wormhole. On her side, Amelia sees a distortion in space, seemingly like an arm reaching out. Thinking it's the omnibenevolent beings, she reaches out. Then, everything goes silent, the ship stabilizes. The ship's integrity barely keeps up with the insane speeds as they travel through the wormhole. On her side, Amelia sees a distortion in space, seemingly like an arm reaching out. Thinking it's the omnibenevolent beings, she reaches out. Then, everything goes silent, the ship stabilizes, and they float smoothly once again. The crew gathers for a meeting. They decide on which planet to travel to. Dr. Edmonds has lost connection to the crew, leaving them with 2 choices. One of the choices is a planet near Gargantua, a black hole. An hour there is 7 years on Earth. With this information, Doyle and Cooper argue. Doyle wants to proceed with Plan B and let everyone on Earth die. Cooper proposes a middle ground. The ship will travel to the opposite side of Gargantua so that their time won't get affected when they land. The crew agrees with the plan. After some preparations, Case accompanies the crew in the expedition to the planet while Romilly stays behind. They experience heavy turbulence as they near the planet's surface. The crew readies for landing, and a vast ocean meets them as they pass through the clouds. Cooper expertly pilots the craft, precisely stopping just before hitting the waters. Time is ticking, and Doyle and Amelia venture out into the shallow seas. Case finds debris from Dr. Miller's beacon. They try to find the rest of the wreckage, walking towards the mountains ahead. Inside the ship, Cooper realizes that the mountains are waves. Fortunately, the waves are moving away from them. Unfortunately, another follows it from behind. Despite the towering wall of water, Amelia continues her search for Dr. Miller's data. She finds it but falls as she tries to pull it out. Case transforms to a wheel and rushes towards her. It carries her to the ship, and Cooper closes the hatch. Just as Doyle is about to enter, the rough waves carry him away. The wave makes contact with the ship, flooding the interior. They get flung around inside as they surf the wave. They survive the rough seas, but the ship is damaged. Cooper snaps at Amelia for not returning when he told her to. They've been on the planet for almost an hour. Not only did they lose Doyle, but they also lost decades worth of time. Amelia believes that Dr. Miller just landed on the planet hours ago due to the time difference, hence why the wreckage was somewhat intact. Their hopelessness grows when Cooper realizes his daughter is now an adult. The waves don't give them time to rest as another is about to crash into them. Their desperate attempts to restart the engine works and they fly off into safety. Back in the ship, a much older Romilly welcomes them. They've been gone for over 23 years, leaving the two in disbelief. Romilly informs them that he has learned all he can from the black holes but couldn't send his research to Earth. Meanwhile, Cooper goes through over 23 years of video messages, seeing his children's lives pass him by. Cooper tears up as his timid young boy has now become a husband, a father, and a parent who lost a child in a span of several videos. Donald died, and Murph had grown distant. Tom says his goodbyes as he accepts that Cooper isn't coming back. The screen fades to black, and Murph appears, starting her message by cursing at her father. It's her birthday, and she's the same age as Cooper. She finishes off her message by asking him to return. Murph dries her tears and sees Professor Brand in a wheelchair by the door. He's surprised to see her sending her first message. They make their way to his office to work together on the still unsolved theory. Murph stares intently at the board. She realizes that they've been looking at the equation all wrong. Professor Brand knows about this, but Murph doesn't understand why he doesn't make a change. Back in Endurance, they weigh their options of visiting Dr. Mann's planet or Edmonds, who has stopped transmitting a while back. Amelia believes that the latter is the better option as it's farther from the black hole. Cooper argues that Dr. Mann, who continues to send transmissions to them, is the obvious choice. Before they start a vote, Cooper informs Romilly about Amelia's bias for Edmund's planet since they have a relationship. Amelia doesn't deny it. Instead, she even pushes the idea of their love being more than enough of a reason for them to choose Edmund. The two aren't affected by her emotional speech, and they chart a course to Dr. Mann's planet. On Earth, Tom fulfilled his potential of being a farmer. He burns a line of crops to stop the blight from spreading. Murph visits Tom and his wife, Lois. Tom's second son, Coop, has respiratory problems due to the dust storms in the area and the deteriorating conditions of the planet. Meanwhile, in Endurance, Amelia holds a grudge against Cooper. She says that if Dr. Mann's planet isn't suitable, they'd have to either return or continue with Plan B on Edmund's planet, sacrificing the lives of billions on Earth. Murph rushes to the hospital to visit Professor Brand. As he nears his death, she assures him that she'll finish what he started. With his last words, Brand confesses to Murph that Project Endurance wasn't meant to return and that Plan A and the theory are all lies. Brand dies, leaving a dumbfounded and frustrated Murph. Murph relays the news through a video message. She accuses Amelia of knowing her father's lies. A spacecraft on the horizon prepares to enter Dr. Mann's planet. The crew arrives at the snowy mountains, where they see a base. They open the rundown living area to see Dr. Mann in a deep sleep. Upon waking him, Mann immediately cries at the sight of another human being. Mann shares his discovery about the planet. They are currently at a peak where there is no breathable air. However, the planet has a lower surface, where life can hopefully cultivate. He thinks that alien life forms already habituate the planet, but they are yet to be seen. Tars requests Amelia to view the video message, and Murph's voice fills the entire room as she reveals the truth. Murph whimpers at the idea of her father leaving them to die. Cooper is taken aback by the sudden revelation. Amelia swears she doesn't know what Murph is talking about. Mann butts in, saying that Professor Brand solved the equation even before the astronauts left, but simply proving the theory isn't enough. They need information on what's inside the black hole to put it into practical use. Unfortunately, the laws of nature don't allow that. Mann justifies the professor's actions, saying that sacrificing the lives of the billions on Earth is necessary to save the human race. Cooper is in denial as he plans to return to Earth. Back on Earth, Murph informs her colleague, Getty, about the professor's lies. Getty says society deserves to know their fate, but Murph refuses to disclose this information. She still hasn't given up on Plan A gut feeling tells her that there's a chance. She remembers the ghost in her room and plans to return and decipher its messages finally. Murph visits her old room while Getty checks up on Tom's family's worsening condition. Getty berates Tom for not leaving their home, and he punches Getty. Murph provokes him by asking if he'll wait for his next kid to die before he moves out. Tom threatens them to leave. Along their way, Murph steers into the cornfields. She grabs a fuel tank and starts dousing this up prepares for his departure to Earth. Romilly suggests humanity about how the survival and removes Cooper transmission to things wrong, planning to desert the crew. Cooper communicates with him, but he doesn't respond. Case informs the crew that the auto-docking procedure on board the vessel is disabled. It'll take a miracle for Dr. Mann to board Endurance successfully. Mann approaches the space station and plans to dock the ship manually. The ship dangerously hovers around the hatch, and Mann fails to align it perfectly. Despite the blaring alarms, he still plans to open the hatch. Cooper and the crew approach Endurance. He desperately asks Mann not to open the hatch as this will cause the airlock to explode. Amelia's voice starts to broadcast in the ship, warning him again. Mann justifies his actions, saying he's doing this for humanity. He opens the hatch, and the airlock explodes. The crew sees the explosion from a distance, and debris approaches them. Cooper assumes control of the spacecraft. He plans to chase Endurance and dock at extreme speeds. Case says it's not possible. He counters, saying it's necessary. They're under the docking area as Endurance nears the stratosphere of the planet. Tars opens up the hatch, and they're perfectly aligned. The ship starts rotating with Endurance. They experience intense G-force, causing Amelia to black out. Cooper holds on to the controls for dear life, and Tars successfully locks in. They stop the rotation, pushing Endurance out of the stratosphere. The station stabilizes, and they celebrate. However, their celebration gets cut off when Case says that they're headed to Gargantua. Inside the ship, they travel through the damaged corridors. In the generator room, Amelia says that there's power and the system is stable. Cooper announces that the navigations are destroyed. They can't return to Earth, but they might reach Edmund's planet. Cooper plans to use Gargantua as a giant slingshot to propel them to Edmund. They prepare, using every last component of Endurance. They'd have to rid of all the weight they can, including Tars. Amelia doesn't like the idea, but Tars says his only goal is to save humanity. Endurance is in Gargantua's orbit. They reach the maximum velocity, and they start their exit. One by one, all the engines fire off. Tars detaches and says his goodbyes. Amelia panics upon hearing Case starting to eject Cooper's section. There aren't enough resources for both of them, and Cooper detaches, sacrificing himself. He approaches the center of the black hole. Amelia cries as she listens to Cooper's final words. Darkness enveloped Cooper's ship, and he calls out to Tars. Flashes of light start to appear, and turbulence increases. The light hits the ship like droplets of rain, and the exterior begins to burn up. Cooper shouts and loses consciousness. He's awakened by the computer telling him to eject. He flies off into the darkness, shivering in the coldness and pressure. He falls into a seemingly endless room and grabs hold of one of the walls. He realizes that the wall is made up of books. He tries to look on the other side, and he sees a room. He bangs on the shelves, and a young Murph notices the fallen books and miniature lander. Cooper calls out to the young Murph, but she doesn't hear him. He turns to see that every wall is a different event in Murph's past. He sees his younger self planning to leave. He cusses himself out and shouts at him to stay. Cooper realizes he can communicate through Morse code. He starts pushing into the books, trying to spell out the word stay. Meanwhile, Present Murph starts to pull out the books. She becomes emotional as she looks for the message she wrote in a notebook when she was a child. Present Murph realizes that the ghost was her father. Tars survives and calls out to Cooper. He says they're in the dimension created by the omnibenevolent beings where time is a physical plane. Cooper realizes child. Present Murph realizes that the ghost was her father. Tars survives and calls out to Cooper. He says they're in the dimension created by the omnibenevolent beings where time is a physical plane. Cooper realizes that since gravity can travel through time, he can send a message to Murph. Present Murph realizes the same thing and counts on her father to send a message. Cooper asks Tars for NASA's coordinates in binary. He sends it to his past self in the form of the sand. Cooper laughs as he realizes that the omnibenevolent beings chose Murph to save humanity. He travels through the corridors, following his love for Murph. He believes he can use the watch to inform Murph about the quantum data she can use to make Planet work. Murph grabs the watch, and there she sees the seconds arm ticking in Morse code. She runs outside and hugs Tom, saying that their father came back to save them. In Brand's office, she figures out how to execute Plan A. An overjoyed Murph launches her calculations and kisses Getty. Tars informs Cooper that their plan worked as the omnibenevolent beings start to close the dimension they're in. Cooper reveals that the beings are humans who have lived long after them and evolved into something beyond their imagination. Cooper gets consumed by the bright light and sees Amelia reaching out her hand to him. His arm was the distortion she previously saw. Cooper wakes up in a hospital room. He looks out to see a warped world, and the doctor informs him that they're in Cooper Station near Saturn. He appreciates them naming it after him, and the nurse laughs. It's named after his daughter, who is on her way to see him. As he tours the station, he sees how far humans have come. They find themselves in his home that acts as a sort of museum honoring Cooper's life. He sees Tars, and later that day, he fixes him up. Cooper enters a room to see his descendants and and old Murph. She's overjoyed to see that her father came back. She then asks for him to leave and look for Amelia. Amelia and Case are alone in a foreign land. Meanwhile, Cooper and Tar start a journey to reunite with them. The omnibenevolent beings are humans. After generations of evolution and innovation, they can enter a multidimensional plane. This allowed them to create the three-dimensional plane where Cooper was transported to when he entered the black hole. There, he gave the quantum data to Murph, which she then used to execute Plan A. The NASA space station was able to leave Earth and create stations spread throughout the galaxy, and one of them is the Cooper station. The black hole spewed him out near Saturn years later because of the slower time he experienced when he got slingshotted in Gargantuan. Cooper then meets a much older Murph, who tells him to find Amelia. Amelia just landed on Edmund's planet due to time relativity, probably thinking that she's humanity's last hope, not knowing that humanity has sent out Cooper to find her. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. Hi guys, sci-fi driving. Hi guys, Sci-Fi Recapped here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. So today, I'm gonna explain a mind-blowing science fiction movie from Thailand called Deep. The movie starts by showing a man with a medical suit who is trying to jump from the top of the school building. Scene continues to classroom where Professor Nietzsche, teacher and also principal of the school, explain about insomnia. She tells her students that insomnia is a physical disorder caused by stress and anxieties, and will bring worse effects if you keep staying awake for a longer time, such as perception of reality becomes distorted, hallucination, etc. This is Jane. And she is the main character in the movie. She is used to going without sleep. The medical student spends her night studying, caring for her grandmother, and worrying about her little sister June. She's obsessively concerned with the safety of her house and checking the lock multiple times only to make the nights longer. This is June, Jane's sister. June usually comes home late because of practicing music and her sister accuses her for sleeping around. June is unhappy with that statement and they start fighting. June's phone falls off and the screen is broken. June then walks away and leaves her sister alone. When Jane discovers that they are extremely behind on their home loan, she comes to the school principal and tells her that she wants to drop out. Otherwise, Professor Nietzsche suggests Jane to sign up for a German pharmaceutical project offering huge cash compensation. The project is called Deep, which is dedicated to harvest a chemical from a brain called curtonin that essentially can be used to wake up coma patients. The project itself consists of 3 levels and the duration of each level varies from each person. The higher the level, the more crashinin that will be extracted. Out of nowhere, suddenly a man called Dr. Hans Miller approaches Jane. He is the director of research in the company. He offers Jane to participate in level 1 and she will be awarded $3,000 upon completion. What Jane really needs to do is implant a microchip in the occipital area and stay awake until a certain amount of curtonin is extracted from her. Because Jane is so desperate to help her family, she finally agrees to the offer. Hans also handed a watch to measure the amount of curtonin harvested and to alert the user if he or she falls asleep. If the user falls asleep for more than 60 seconds, they will die because of short circuit which will stop the heart. Jane soon discovers 3 more of her classmates are also part of the experiment. It's Win, a top-class party animal who spends more time in the club than classroom. There's also Sin, famous beauty blogger, and Peach, a gaming nerd who always follows Sin wherever she goes. The students become quite the foursome and support each other through in order to get easy money from the Deep project. They finally got 100% in their watch, which indicates that their first level has been completed and get the chip extracted from their body. Easy money given from the professor and they immediately spend their money on entertainment and stuff. Jane gives her sister a brand new phone and Sin decides to spend the money for a boob job. You know what I mean. While playing bowling, Sin tells her friends that she has been followed and stalked by someone lately and suspects that it's from the German company. Suddenly Jane changed the topic and asked her friend whether they want to participate in the next level of Deep project, and all of them spontaneously says yes because of the easy money. The day after, they gather again at German company's lab and ready for Deep level 2. This time, they'll be required to produce more curtonin, so it will be about 5 days with no sleep at all. They hesitate a bit at first, but when they find out that they will be paid $15,000, they suddenly accept the offer. After 3 days without sleep, the indicator from the watch shows only 40% of curtonin has been harvested. On the other hand, they begin to feel the side effects of staying awake. Win starts to hear strange things, hallucinating, and suddenly punches his friend for no reason while playing basketball. Jane also becomes emotionally unstable and easily irritated. June asks her sister what happened and how she could be able to gather that huge amount of money. Unhappy with the questions, they get into conflict and Jane walks out from her room. At this moment, June spots the German pharmaceutical business card and figures out what Jane has been doing. The next day, the Insomniac group meet at the canteen and complain that the curtonin percentages keep stucking low. At this moment, Jane spots that Win has a higher curtonin percentage than the rest of the group and realizes that keep moving will increase the percentage faster. They decide to conduct a night party at Peach's house. They are having fun and Win figures out a brilliant idea to keep them awake, which is mixing stimulant pills with mocktails. At first Jane hesitates to drink because the pills may cause strokes. Win assures them that they need to make it through the night and finally the rest of the group drink the mixture. They continue to dance and surprisingly, Jane starts to dance like a madman in front of her friends. At this moment, the curtonin percentage rises sharply and Win has already harvested 83%. After getting out from the toilet, Sin accidentally goes into Peach's room and figures out that Peach is the one who has been stalking her all the time. Sin is very shocked and suddenly faints. The situation turns into chaos. They need to wake her up while the time in the watch keeps ticking. Luckily, because all of them are medical students, they manage to wake Win up in the last seconds and at this point, they finally manage to harvest 100% curtonin. The next day, they come back to the company and state that they will not proceed to level 3, The doctor keeps persuading them to continue because nobody's done it better than them. The doctor also offers enormous amounts of money, which is $30,000 to the kids, but a no is a no. They reject the offer and walk out from the room. Life goes on as they decide not to go back to Deep. Since that stressful moment, Sin is not willing to talk to Peach again, even though Peach confesses that he likes Sin and all of the stalking happens because he cares about her. In the mid-years out that June has also been participating in Deep Project and is very angry about it. And once again, Dr. Hans Miller, Jane asks the doctor to remove the chip off or she will call the police, but the doctor threatens Jane back by not going to take off the chip if Jane and her friend won't proceed to level 3. She takes her sister and walks away from the lab. She meets her insomniac friends and begs for help, says that they can, breaks glass, and scratches his face with glass. Sin goes into madness and blames Jane and her sister starts to play a role and not an actual doctor. Trying to escape, they have been locked from outside. Sin destroys all the CCTV and Win suddenly. It is Win who PCL that could cause in order to escape from the coma. Perfect collapses. Jane still does not enter his chest, joining level 3. At the end, joining level 3, Sir Nietzsche is arrested and none of them getting paid for joining level. After that, Professor Nietzsche is arrested and none of them getting paid for joining level 3. At the end, everyone has chosen to sleep like a rock, rather than to sleep like the dead and never to wake up and see the sun again. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications.
Hello everyone, this is Mr. To become a huge explosions towards the other immune and sees this and